And I learned quickly. And during the 1.5 years that I worked in that job, I became something of a star. And I built such a good reputation for myself that people were asking me to come and MC their events. They were asking me to moderate their startup events because I was just good at MCing and telling stories and networking. It was a crash course on startups and how startups work and what entrepreneurism was, which I didn't expect, when I thought I was going to San Francisco to wash dishes. And I learned a lot. I made a lot of good connections. After a year and a half, I felt like I wanted to do something more creative because I have a creative background, but I was working for the Korean government, which is quite bureaucratic, as you can imagine. So I ended up coming back to Toronto to pursue a job in animation, which for me at the time seemed like the perfect marriage between a steady income 9-to-5 office job and a creative job. And storytelling. It turned out to be nothing of the sort. Animation, especially if you work in production, which means like the business side of animation. I wasn't an animator. It's a factory. You're just making schedules. It's not creative whatsoever. And it wasn't fulfilling. And I quit that job. It was making me depressed. I was approaching 40 and I was so unhappy with the direction that my life and career were heading in. I was literally getting depressed and I had a breakdown. My body just stopped working for a few days. And I was like, okay, I realized I'm not on the right path. I need to reassess what I'm doing. So I decided to quit my job in animation. It was a great animation studio too. I actually thought I wanted to become a stand-up comedian. And I did that for a few months. I love entertaining people. There's nothing that brings me more joy than standing in front of a crowd on a stage and hearing their laughter. I did improv comedy as a hobby for about 5 years, and I'm addicted. It's a drug. It's a drug. If you've ever done it, it's a drug. And I thought, okay, I convinced myself stand-up comedy is everything I want. Like I get to be a storyteller. I get to stand on a stage, make people laugh. I get to talk about stuff that are important to me. I get to travel. And I did it for a few months and I fucking hated it. Fucking hated it. Because it's a job. It's not,
Right.
you don't enjoy it anymore.
Yeah. There's the same grind after a while.
Yeah. I hated the process. And you gotta love the process. So then I went through another crisis. I was like, okay, what do I do now? And I was walking through the park, pondering about the direction of my life and being all depressed. And I just was being honest to myself. And I said, you know what, Hanmin, what you really want is to become your own boss. And that took a lot of courage for me to say that because, having to be your own boss, that's scary. Where are you going to make the money come from? How are you going to generate income? Yeah. If you accept that as the truth, that's a lot of responsibilities I'm taking on.
Yeah, not just for yourself, but for the people who work for you.
Exactly. But I knew that was the truth at the end of the day. So I was kind of relieved to figure out a sense of direction where I need to go. And then I spent some time thinking about, okay, what are some problems that affect today in my life and the world? I sat down and I started making a list like transportation, which is a huge problem in Toronto. And I started coming up with various business ideas like importing salmon oil and stuff like that,
You were casting your net wide to see what could be the potential options.
I was brainstorming. Yeah. I'm brainstorming.
Yeah, you were brainstorming, yeah.
And then the second that I wrote meaningful connections, I was like, oh, this is something. This is something that's meaningful to me. Meaningful connections. And I know even with the age of the internet, in the digital age, we might experience this more. I want to help people create the type of meaningful relations that brings them joy, not one that reinforces social hierarchy like Instagram. And I was thinking about this problem and I thought, okay, well, where do I encounter this problem? Meaningful connections. Well, I've always found it in dating. So, why is it particularly difficult for me to find meaningful connections in today's dating apps? Well, it's because I'm a 1.5 and people don't know what that is and people don't understand what that is. When they see me, they see long duck dong. And that's always been a problem for me. And I know that whenever I meet another 1.5, I instantly, we click. I feel like they understand me and that I understand them. And it makes me happy. I feel like I had made a friend, even if I never see them again. I want to create a dating app that allows people like me to tell their story and meet others like ourselves and to find that meaningful connection. So that was the start of it.
And the way that a like works is actually quite different to how other dating apps work.
Well, video is becoming more normal. Like every day, I'm coming across an article that's saying, "Oh, this new video dating app, this new video dating app." So it is becoming normalized, it seems, especially because of the popularity of TikTok. It just seems obvious that the dating app world should adopt this technology, especially because it's already existed in the 80s, right? You know, those 80s
Yeah, exactly.
VHS
The dating tapes.
Exactly, exactly. And because we have our own cameras on our phone and you could do it on your own and distribute it, it just makes sense. And it was particularly beneficial to people like me because the problem that we see is, like, if I break it down, it breaks down to three things. One, cultural mismatch. Because the Asian community is so diverse and we have such different narratives, it's so easy to meet somebody who's on the other spectrum and not know that until you meet them. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. So one of the users that I've come to meet and know through this process of building this app is this lawyer who's a Canadian. And he told me how he also met another Chinese Canadian woman on a dating app. They clicked, everything was going well. And then when they met, they were both surprised. He was surprised to find out that she doesn't feel comfortable speaking in English. And she was surprised to find out that he doesn't speak Mandarin at all.
Right. So the label Chinese actually meant nothing that was actually in common for them.
Exactly.
Except for the way that they looked.
Yeah. Like, that is part of your identity. How could they not have known this through the very tool that is designed for such a thing?
Right. Right.
We can't even hide this if we meet, but they couldn't even communicate it.
Right. So the app it didn't present the right things to them.
Most dating apps, the popular ones, the status quo, they're not catered to our experience. They don't allow us to communicate the nuance of our identity. Mm-hmm. They don't have that facility. Mm-hmm. Most dating apps, like Tinder and Bumble and Hinge, your profile is comprised of your photograph and some written words.
And you have to project the rest.
Yeah. So pictures are great for communicating your physical appearance and your lifestyle. And words can communicate your value, but words are actually not very helpful because most people don't know themselves well enough to communicate their value. They don't know what their value is. And most people end up writing that they like traveling and that they like dogs and that they like music, which most people do. Yeah, exactly. You don't get a sense of their personality or their cultural background or identity. How do they feel about themselves? Can they laugh at themselves? Do they take themselves seriously? Do they have an accent? What's their confidence level? What's their energy level? Are they energetic or are they calm? You can't get these sense in a photograph. Even if they are jumping in their photograph, when you meet them, they could be completely calm and introverted. The opposite. And video allows that. So I thought, yeah, video is a good solution for people like myself, because I also went on numerous dates with people, with Asian women who were new immigrants. And there's nothing wrong with being an immigrant because we're all immigrants. But that's not the person that I was looking to build my life with. I want to build my life with someone, especially having gone through my divorce, with a person who is completely foreign to my culture. I want to build a life with and connect with someone who understands my culture and relates to my culture. So this app is really about culture. I was disappointed too many times after meeting somebody on a first date and realizing, oh, we don't really have much in common actually. So I thought this was a really great solution. And cultural mismatch, that's one. Number two, for women, the problem that they encounter is Asian fetish because they're hypersexualized. not just by white men, which is what happens most of the time, but also by Asian men too. So we see a woman's profile on a dating app with pictures and words, and we project a stereotype onto them.
That's so interesting. It's like the same thing that's happened, to me in perceiving other Asians as the stereotypes that they were presented as in the media. Mm-hmm. And that's so interesting that the same kind of thing happens in the dating world, from Asian men to Asian women. I had never thought about that. I was just like, oh, but we of all people should know ourselves better. We shouldn't have these stereotypes. But of course we do, because especially if we grew up in a context where we only saw ourselves represented as stereotypes, then like what else do you expect? Where should this nuance come from if it's not presented to us?
Yeah, because we internalize it, right? We accept that as truth. So when we think of Asian women, we think about them in the way that they're represented in those movies. Like, well, they're not given any prominent character roles, so they're timid. They're sexualized. That's how we see Asian women, right? And we're all guilty of it. I don't think Asian women are guilty of projecting that image because they know themselves they're not. But Asian women are also guilty of doing the opposite on men too. When they see men's profiles, which is the third problem that we experience. Asian men, they are emasculated and as a result receive no matches or very low. So those three problems, cultural mismatch, Asian fetish, and low matches for men were the three problems that I thought Asian individuals encounter in the dating space. So I thought video is a good solution to that. But not just video. Video in combination with prompts that celebrate the Asian experience in a positive way. So my favorite one is I knew I was Asian when. Mm-hmm. Because that allows me to tell a story of when I realized and caught myself acting really Asian and laughed at myself. And that some people don't like that prompt because they think it reinforces stereotypes, but that's really up to you. It's how you use it. And you don't have to use that prompt. Yeah. We have neutral ones like on a typical Sunday, or my favorite movies are. But other ones that are Asian are like, my Asian role model is the best thing about being your ethnicity. The best noodle soup is, without a doubt, my go-to Asian snack is, things like that celebrate our Asian experience. And we don't have an outlet or a platform where we get to talk about that in a way that celebrates it. I mean, we do in subtle Asian traits and all these other platforms that are groups that are popping up, like your podcast, but we don't have one in dating. We don't have one in the dating space, and we need that.
Of course, the intention behind these Asian-centric prompts is not to keep on reinforcing the boxes that we already live in partially, but to encourage the dialogue and maybe laugh at ourselves, because there are some really stereotypical things that we do. Like my answer to some of those questions would be like, I know I'm Asian when I, at the bottom of the shampoo bottle, there's only a little bit left, and I cut the shampoo bottle open so I can get the rest of it in. I put water into the bottle I can get every single bit out. That's wonderful. I love hearing that.
And I love, these are the type of things that we need to share on a dating app, because it's so intimate about you, and you're sharing a vulnerability. When you're searching for a partner, you need to open up and share that vulnerable side of yourself to find a real connection. You can't say, I've been to 35 countries in my lifetime. It's admirable, but that's not what creates a connection. Connection is made, and friendships too, are made when people are able to be vulnerable with one another and share a part of their side that they don't always share. Yeah. So the fact that you can tell a story like that, that's vulnerable, that might light you in a negative light in a way, but you take that as a positive, tells me so much about you. It also tells me you're a happy person, and you know how to love yourself, you know how to accept who you are, and you're comfortable with that. So that shows a lot of emotional maturity. So these prompts and the combination of prompts and videos, it's not what you say that's so important as much as how you say it and how you communicate your sense of being. And I think we do that with just by existing. your story, your entire story of your life is wrapped up in who you are, and we breathe it and it flows in our veins. So we don't need to try anything. We just need to be ourselves. I think, and that's our story.